full story. My parents demanded I sell my 1.8 to our car collection to buy my unemployed sister, A. I am Ella, 32 years old, and the proud owner of a $1.8 million car collection that took me 10 years to build. 12 rare vehicles each with their own story, each restored by my own hands. Last week, I received a call from my parents that left me speechless. They demanded I sell my cars to buy my unemployed sister a house. What followed was a betrayal so deep that I found myself moving 12 classic cars in the middle of the night. Before I tell you how I ended up moving 12 classic cars in the dead of night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and hit subscribe to join me for more stories about family drama and vintage automobiles. Cars have been my passion for as long as I can remember. My earliest memory is sitting on my grandfather's lap in his 1964 Ford Mustang, my tiny hands gripping the massive steering wheel as he let me pretend to drive. The rumble of the engine, the smell of leather and gasoline, all these sensations imprinted on my 5-year-old brain and never left. When other little girls were playing with dolls, I was flipping through car magazines memorizing makes and models. My bedroom walls weren't covered with boy band posters, but with classic automobiles torn from calendars and automotive publications. My parents viewed this as a phase, something cute, but ultimately impractical for their daughter. High school brought a pivotal moment when I enrolled in auto shop class as the only girl. The boys laughed at first, but that stopped when I consistently outperformed them on both written tests and practical work. My teacher, Mr. Harrington, recognized my talent and became my first true mentor. He stayed after hours to teach me advanced techniques and lent me rare books on automotive restoration. When college application time came, I announced my intention to pursue automotive engineering. My parents were dismayed, suggesting more traditional paths for women. My mother pushed for nursing, my father for business, but I stood firm. My grandfather secretly helped me apply for scholarships, and I was accepted to a respected program in Michigan. Those 4 years were challenging, but exhilarating. I worked part-time at a local garage to supplement my scholarship, sleeping only 4 hours most nights, but loving every minute of hands-on experience. I graduated with honors, my parents reluctantly attending the ceremony while my grandfather beamed with pride. My first real job came at 22, apprenticing at Classics Reborn, one of Detroit's most prestigious restoration shops. The pay was minimal, but the education was priceless. I learned from master craftsmen how to bring rusted relics back to gleaming perfection. I lived in a tiny studio apartment eating ramen noodles and saving every possible penny. 3 years of disciplined saving gave me enough for my first project car, a 1967 Chevy Impala I found abandoned in a rural junkyard. The owner practically gave it away for $500, seeing only a rusted shell. I saw potential. For 18 months, every free moment was devoted to that Impala. I scavenged parts from salvage yards, taught myself upholstery techniques from online videos, and hand-polished every chrome detail. The day I first turned the key and heard that engine roar to life, tears streamed down my face. It wasn't just a car I had revived, it was proof that I could make my dreams reality through sheer determination. When I took my grandfather for the first ride, his proud smile made every hardship worthwhile. That first restoration led to side jobs, which led to a reputation in car circles. People began bringing me their neglected classics, trusting my meticulous approach and fair pricing. By 26, I had saved enough to rent a small commercial space and open Vintage Revival, my own restoration business. My second personal acquisition came a year later, a 1955 Porsche 356 Speedster with severe body damage but a salvageable chassis. I worked on it for 2 years between client projects, often sleeping on a cot in my shop. When finished, its value had increased tenfold. I knew then that my passion could also be a solid investment strategy. Each subsequent year brought new additions to my collection: a rare 1970 Dodge Challenger RTA, 1963, Corvette split window, a 1959 Cadillac Eldorado. Each car represented countless hours of restoration work, research, and the excitement of the hunt. My grandfather passed away when I was 28, leaving me his beloved Mustang to add to my growing collection. By 30, my business was thriving, and my collection had grown to 9 vehicles with a combined value of over $1 million. The next 2 years brought 3 more special editions, including a one of 500 1973 Ferrari Dino that became the crown jewel of my collection. All told, 12 vehicles worth approximately $1.8 million. Despite my financial success, I lived modestly. My home was a small 3-bedroom ranch-style house with an oversized 4-car garage and a separately built climate-controlled 8-car barn on my property. Cars were my luxury, not designer clothes or exotic vacations. I met James at a car auction 4 years ago. Unlike previous boyfriends who either felt intimidated by my knowledge or fetishized my interest as some sexy novelty, James appreciated my passion while having his own successful career as an architectural engineer. He understood the countless hours I spent in the garage because he often spent similar time hunched over his drafting table. We balanced each other perfectly, supporting without smothering. What I built was more than a collection of vehicles. It was a testament to my vision work ethic and refusal to conform to others' expectations. Each car had a story. Each restoration held memories and challenges overcome. They represented financial security, yes, but more importantly, they were physical manifestations of my life's passion. I never imagined my own family would demand I dismantle this dream piece by piece. To understand the shocking demand my parents made, you need to know about my older sister, Amanda. 2 years my senior at 34, Amanda was always the golden child in our family dynamics. Where I was practical, she was creative. Where I was determined, she was spontaneous. Where I saved, she spent. And where I faced consequences, Amanda was sheltered from them. Growing up, Amanda received more expensive Christmas presents, larger birthday celebrations, and constant praise for her artistic talents. When she wanted horse riding lessons, my parents found the money. When I needed tools for auto shop class, I worked weekends at a local diner. This wasn't because we were poor, quite the opposite. My father's position as a bank executive and my mother's real estate career provided a comfortable upper middle class lifestyle. The disparity in treatment was simply their preference. Amanda attended an exclusive private high school while I went to public school. Her art was professionally framed and displayed throughout our home, while my academic achievements merited only a passing nod. I learned early to find validation within myself rather than seeking it from my parents. College further highlighted the difference. Amanda was sent to an expensive liberal arts college in New England, where she changed her major 5 times in 6 years before finally graduating with a general studies degree. My engineering program, despite being more prestigious in its field, cost a fraction of her education thanks to my scholarships and part-time work. After graduation, Amanda's career path resembled a pinball game, bouncing from one pursuit to another, never gaining momentum. First came her attempt at fashion design, which ended when she grew frustrated with the technical aspects of pattern making. My parents funded her failed clothing line to the tune of $50,000 before she abandoned it. Next was her real estate phase, following in our mother's footsteps. She completed the licensing course, but quit after 3 months of actual work, claiming the hours were too demanding and clients too picky. This was followed by a stint as a yoga instructor, an interior design assistant, and briefly a social media influencer, focusing on luxury lifestyle content, despite having no actual income to support such a lifestyle. Through each career incarnation, our parents provided financial safety nets. They paid her rent when she couldn't cover her car payments, when she prioritized vacations over bills, and never pushed her to develop financial independence, all while reminding me how practical and financially stable I was, as if my responsibility somehow justified their continued enabling of Amanda. 5 years ago, Amanda seemed to find stability when she married Thomas, a successful investment banker. Their wedding was an extravagant $100,000 affair, mostly funded by my parents, who took out a second mortgage to cover costs. I remember my mother saying, "This is the only time we'll have to help her get started now that she's marrying well." I had my doubts but kept them to myself. For a while, things appeared perfect. Amanda became a self-described socialite, joining charity boards and ladies who lunch groups. She decorated their luxury condo with expensive art and designer furniture, posted carefully curated social media content, and seemed to have found her place as a wealthy man's wife. Then 8 months ago, Thomas filed for divorce. The details emerged slowly through family calls and visits. Apparently, Amanda had been spending far beyond even Thomas's considerable income, opening secret credit card shopping compulsively and lying about their finances. When he discovered the extent of her deception, nearly $200,000 in hidden debt, he ended the marriage. Their prenuptial agreement was solid. Amanda received a one-time settlement that should have provided a reasonable cushion while she rebuilt her life. Instead, she spent it in 3 months on a combination of luxury travel cosmetic procedures and renting a high-end apartment she couldn't possibly afford long-term. When the settlement money ran out, Amanda moved into our parents' guest room temporarily, they assured me. That was 5 months ago. Despite the divorce being finalized and her having a degree and previous work experience, Amanda made no effort to find employment. She claimed she was traumatized from the marriage and needed time to heal before job searching. This pattern will sound familiar to anyone with an entitled sibling. What made it more frustrating was my own relationship with my parents. While they praised my success in occasional phone calls, they continuously peppered these conversations with remarks about how I could help Amanda if I wasn't so selfish with my time and money. When I suggested Amanda might work at my shop handling customer service and scheduling, my mother scoffed. She's not mechanically inclined like you, and dealing with dirty cars would trigger her allergies. When I offered to help Amanda build a resume and practice interviews, my father interrupted with, "She's not looking for entry-level work. She needs something befitting her social standing." Last Thanksgiving provided a preview of tensions to come. Amanda complained throughout dinner about her dating prospects being limited without access to the right social circles, and lamented how embarrassing it was to live with parents at her age. Meanwhile, she refused to discuss any realistic job options or affordable housing alternatives. When I mentioned a friend's condo building had reasonably priced units available in a decent neighborhood, Amanda rolled her eyes. I couldn't possibly live there. Do you know what kind of people rent apartments for that price? When I pointed out that I lived in a similarly priced area, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. The Christmas gathering was worse. Amanda openly commented on how unfair it was that I had 12 cars, while she couldn't even afford one. She had never shown any interest in cars before, but suddenly my collection became symbolic of some cosmic injustice in her mind. My parents didn't defend me when she suggested I was hoarding wealth while she suffered. I tried explaining that my cars represented years of labor investment and strategic decisions, not bags of cash sitting idle. I'd purchased most in poor condition, invested my professional skills to restore them, and carefully maintain their value. This was met with Amanda's dismissive, "Must be nice to have expensive hobbies that make you even more money." As winter turned to spring, Amanda's resentment grew alongside her inactivity. She began posting passive-aggressive social media comments whenever I shared business achievements or restoration projects. Family calls increasingly featured hints that I should do more to help her, though what specifically was never stated directly. Until that fateful call last week when the hints became an outright demand that shocked me to my core. Last Tuesday started like any other day. I arrived at my shop at 7 to finish a delicate upholstery repair on a client's vintage Mercedes before moving to the engine rebuild scheduled for the afternoon. Around 11, my phone rang with my parents' number. I almost let it go to voicemail given my busy schedule, but something told me to answer. I wish I hadn't. "Hello?" I balanced the phone between my ear and shoulder, while carefully aligning leather pieces. "Ella." My father's voice sounded unusually formal. "Your mother and I need to discuss something important with you." "Are you alone?" "I'm at work, Dad. I've got clients waiting. Can this wait until evening?" "No, it cannot." My mother's voice joined in. They were on speakerphone. "This is a family emergency." Heart racing, I set down my tools. "Is everyone okay? Is someone hurt?" "We're fine physically," my father clarified. "But Amanda's situation has become untenable. She needs a permanent solution to her housing situation, and as a family we need to pull together." Relief that no one was injured quickly gave way to wariness. I've offered to help her find affordable apartments several times. She's rejected every suggestion. Apartments aren't suitable, my mother interrupted. Amanda needs stability, a real home in a good neighborhood, where she can rebuild her social connections and eventually find another husband. I remained silent, already sensing where this was heading. We've been looking at houses in Lakeview Estates. My father continued naming one of the most expensive neighborhoods in our city, where homes started at around $800,000. There's a perfect property available, 4 bedrooms, pool exclusive address. It would give Amanda the fresh start she deserves. And how exactly is Amanda planning to afford a house in Lakeview Estates without a job? I asked, though I already knew the answer. "That's why we're calling," my mother said, her tone suggesting I was being deliberately obtuse. "Your car collection is worth almost $2 million according to what you've told us. You don't need 12 vehicles. No one does. If you sold just half of them, Amanda could buy the house outright and have money left for furnishings." The leather piece I'd been working on slipped from my hands as their words sank in. They weren't suggesting I help with a security deposit or co-sign a reasonable loan. They were demanding I liquidate nearly $1 million of my assets so Amanda could have a luxury home while continuing not to work. "You can't be serious," I finally managed. "We're entirely serious." My father's banker voice took over, the one he used when explaining financial matters as if to a child. "Your sister is family. Family supports each other. You have excess, she has need. The math is simple." I took a deep breath, trying to process the audacity. Those cars aren't just sitting around collecting dust. They're investments. They're my passion. They're literally the product of my life's work. They're objects my mother dismissed. Amanda is flesh and blood, your own sister, who refuses to get a job, I pointed out, who blew through her divorce settlement on spas and shopping, who's made zero effort to become independent. The line went quiet. Then I heard rustling, and a new voice joined the call. "Must be nice sitting in your fancy garage with your millionaire toys while I'm sleeping in our parents' guest room." At 34, Amanda's voice dripped with resentment. "You've always had it so easy." I nearly choked. Easy? I worked 60-hour weeks for a decade. I lived on ramen to save for my first project car. I built my business from nothing while you were getting endless handouts. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You just got lucky that your weird car obsession turned out to be profitable. Some of us weren't so fortunate with our passions." Before I could respond to this stunning revision of reality, my father cut in. "Enough bickering. Here's what needs to happen. We've arranged for a car dealer specializing in classics to come evaluate your collection on Thursday. You'll select 6 cars minimum to sell, including that Ferrari you never drive." "Excuse me," I sputtered. What? "You've arranged for someone to come to my property without my permission. We're trying to facilitate the process," my mother explained, as if this were completely reasonable. "Once we know which ones will fetch the highest prices, you can decide which to keep and which to sell. But the Ferrari definitely needs to go. It alone would cover most of the house cost." I felt my blood pressure rising. "This isn't happening. You have no right to arrange anything involving my property. Cancel your appointment immediately. Don't be selfish, Ella." My father's voice hardened. "We raised you better than this, after all we've done for you." "What exactly did you do for me? I rarely asked for anything growing up, paid for most of my education myself, and built my business without your support. Meanwhile, you've given Amanda everything her entire life, and look where that's gotten her." Amanda gasped in performative outrage. "Just because you decided to waste your life playing with dirty old cars doesn't make you superior." "This conversation is over," I said firmly. "I will not be selling any cars. Amanda needs to get a job and find housing she can actually afford, like every other adult on the planet. If you won't help your sister," my father's voice turned cold, "then you're not the daughter we thought you were. Family means sacrifice. I've sacrificed plenty for this family, including my relationship with you, because you've never respected my choices. But I won't sacrifice my life's work for someone who refuses to take responsibility for herself. You'll reconsider when you've had time to think," my mother said confidently. "The dealer will be there Thursday at 10. Make sure the garage is accessible." The call ended before I could respond. I sat in stunned silence, tools forgotten, trying to process what had just happened. Had my own parents really demanded I dismantle my collection? my passion, my investment portfolio to buy their 34-year-old unemployed daughter a luxury house. I called James immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. They want me to, what he exclaimed after I explained. That's completely insane. They have no right to make that demand. They've already scheduled someone to come value the cars for sale, I said, still in shock, as if my agreement was a foregone conclusion. You need to make it clear this isn't happening, James advised. Send a formal text or email so there's a record you explicitly told them no. I followed his suggestion, writing a clear message stating that I would not be selling any vehicles, no authorized dealers would be permitted on my property, and any further discussion of the matter was closed. The response came minutes later from my mother. You've always been stubborn. We'll discuss in person on Thursday. James suggested I take the afternoon off, something I rarely did with client work pending. But I was too shaken to focus on delicate restoration work. I closed the shop early and drove home mind racing with disbelief and anger. That evening, while trying to distract myself with dinner preparation, I received a text from Amanda. If you won't help me, I'll help myself. Don't be surprised by what happens next. You forced my hand. James read the message over my shoulder and frowned. I don't like the sound of that. It almost sounds like a threat. She's just being dramatic, I said, though a knot of unease formed in my stomach. What could she possibly do? I would soon find out exactly what she meant, and it would change my relationship with my family forever. The next day brought an unwelcome surprise. I had just returned from the shop when a car pulled into my driveway, followed by another. My parents emerged from the first vehicle, Amanda from the second. But it was the third car that made my blood run cold, a luxury sedan with premier classic auto sales emblazoned on its door. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out carrying a leather portfolio. I met them at the front walk, blocking their path to my home. What do you think you're doing? Today is Wednesday, not Thursday, and I told you explicitly not to come. We thought it best to move things along, my father said smoothly. Jason here is a specialist in high-end vehicle sales and can give us realistic numbers today. There will be no numbers because there will be no sales, I stated firmly. Please leave my property now. Don't be difficult, Ella. My mother sighed. We're just gathering information. No one's taking anything today. Amanda stood slightly behind them, a smug expression on her face. She was dressed as if for a real estate closing in a designer dress I recognized from her social media posts about luxury brands. At least let us look at what you've got, the dealer, Jason, spoke up. From what your parents described, you've got some real treasures. I can offer very competitive rates, all cash deals. Did you not hear me? I'm not selling. Not today, not Thursday, not ever. I turned to my parents. I don't know what part of no you don't understand, but this ends now. We thought seeing the potential figures might help you understand the opportunity my father pressed. For the family, the audacity was breathtaking. There is no opportunity. There is only you trying to take what I've built and give it to Amanda because you've always favored her, and can't stand that I've succeeded on my own while she flounders, despite your constant help. My mother gasped at my bluntness. Amanda's eyes narrowed. The dealer looked uncomfortable, clearly realizing he'd walked into a family dispute. Ella, be reasonable, my father tried again. Let's just look at the collection and discuss options. Absolutely not. I pulled out my phone. You have 30 seconds to leave before I call the police and report trespassers. You wouldn't dare, my mother looked shocked. Try me. For a moment, no one moved. Then Amanda stepped around my parents and headed toward my detached garage. I'm just going to take some pictures for reference. She pulled a set of keys from her purse, my house keys, which I'd given my parents for emergencies years ago, and never thought to ask for back. I lunged forward and grabbed her arm. Give me those keys right now, she jerked away. Don't touch me, Mom. Dad, did you see that? She assaulted me, James, who had been watching from the doorway, stepped forward. I think everyone needs to leave now before things escalate further. He took out his own phone, finger poised over the screen. My father assessed the situation and finally nodded. Fine, we'll go. But this conversation isn't over, Ella. Family obligations don't disappear just because they're inconvenient. As they reluctantly returned to their cars, Amanda turned and hissed, You always get what you want. Not this time. One way or another, those cars are going to help me get what I deserve. I watched them drive away, shaking with anger and disbelief. As soon as they were gone, I called a locksmith to change all the locks and reprogram the garage security system. James stayed with me, his presence reassuring as we waited. I think you should talk to a lawyer, he suggested, just to understand your rights and protections if they try to escalate this. They're my cars fully paid for and titled in my name, I said. What could they possibly do? People get desperate and do irrational things, especially when they feel entitled to something, he pointed out. Better to be prepared. The locksmith finished his work by evening, providing new keys and a completely reprogrammed security system for both the house and detached garage. I felt marginally safer, but couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming. That night, unable to sleep, I checked my home security app on my phone and froze. The motion detector on my garage had been triggered. I switched to the camera view and felt my heart stop. There, clearly visible in the security light, were my parents' car and Amanda trying various codes on the garage keypad. My father stood nearby holding what looked like a piece of paper, possibly the old code. Look, she told them the code. Amanda's voice came through faintly on the audio. Try 8477. James, wake up! I shook him frantically. They're trying to get into the garage. We watched in disbelief as they tried several combinations before finally giving up. As they returned to their car, my father glanced directly at the security camera, his expression unreadable before they drove away. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years and contacted a lawyer. Richard Bennett specialized in property law and agreed to see me immediately given the circumstances. I brought documentation of ownership for all my vehicles along with the security footage from the previous night. So your parents and sister are essentially trying to force you to liquidate your assets for your sister's benefit, he clarified after I explained everything. Exactly. And now they're showing up unannounced trying to access my garage without permission, even at night. He reviewed my paperwork carefully. You're the clear legal owner of these vehicles, no loans or liens against them, all properly titled and registered. There's absolutely no legal basis for their claims. My father mentioned something about family assets, I admitted. Could they make some claim that way? Richard shook his head. Unless these cars were family heirlooms passed down through generations, or purchased with family funds explicitly meant for all of you. There's no such concept in law as family assets that would override individual ownership. These are your personal property acquired through your business and expertise. That was somewhat reassuring, but I still felt uneasy. What about their nighttime visit? Is that something I can take action on? The attempted unauthorized entry is concerning? He agreed. We can file for a temporary restraining order based on that footage. I'd also recommend sending a formal cease and desist letter regarding both the property intrusion and any attempts to sell or market your vehicles. While at the lawyer's office, I received an alarming text from a friend in the car collector community. Did you decide to sell the dyno? Just saw a coming soon listing with photos that look like your garage. My stomach dropped. I asked him to forward the listing, and sure enough, there was my Ferrari Dino photographed in my garage listed as coming soon with inquiries directed to a private email address. I searched further and found another listing for my '63 Corvette. Amanda had taken photos during their visit yesterday and was already attempting to market my cars. I showed the listings to Richard, who immediately incorporated them into the cease and desist letter. By the time I left his office, I had a notarized letter to deliver to my parents and sister, along with paperwork filed for a temporary restraining order. James met me for lunch, his face grave as I recounted the morning's discoveries. This is getting out of hand quickly, he said. I'm worried about what they might try next. What more could they possibly do, I asked. His expression was serious. If they're willing to try breaking in at night and are already listing your cars for sale without permission, I don't think there's a line they won't cross. I think you need to move the cars, Ella. Move them where... How I have some ideas, he said. But we need to act fast before they try something more drastic. That afternoon, I delivered the cease and desist letter to my parents' home, leaving it with my clearly uncomfortable father, while Amanda screamed from inside about my selfishness. As I drove away, I knew James was right. My collection wasn't safe, not while Amanda was desperate, and my parents were enabling her most reckless impulses. It was time for a midnight operation. Moving 12 collector cars quickly and secretly is not a simple task. Each vehicle required different considerations. Some weren't currently registered for road use, others needed special handling due to their value or mechanical quirks. The logistics alone were daunting, not to mention the emotional weight of feeling forced to hide my prized possessions. James immediately began making calls to trusted friends in our car community, explaining the situation, without divulging too many personal details. By evening, we had assembled a team of 8 reliable friends, all passionate car people, who understood the bond between a collector and their vehicles. Our first challenge was finding a secure location. It needed to be climate controlled, large enough for all 12 cars, and inconspicuous enough that my family wouldn't easily track it down. Through a friend of a friend, we located a recently vacated commercial warehouse on the outskirts of town. The owner, a car enthusiast himself, agreed to a 6-month lease with no questions asked when James explained we needed discretion. Next came transportation logistics. While some cars could be driven directly, others would require flatbed transport. My '67 Impala was in the middle of a brake system rebuild. My '55 Porsche was too valuable to risk on public roads at night. And my grandfather's Mustang had a fuel line issue I hadn't yet addressed. We created a detailed schedule staggering departures to avoid drawing attention with a convoy of classic cars leaving my property. Each vehicle was assigned a driver or transport method, with specific routes to avoid main roads where possible. James coordinated everything with military precision, creating a shared document with timetables, contact information, and contingency plans. As I prepared each car checking fluids and battery charges, the emotional reality of the situation hit me. These weren't just machines I was moving, they were chapters of my life, physical manifestations of countless hours, challenges overcome, and dreams realized. That I had to hide them away because my own family had become a threat was heartbreaking. The Ferrari dyno required special consideration as my most valuable piece. We arranged for an enclosed transport trailer and scheduled it as the first to move given Amanda's specific interest in it. My restoration colleague Marcus, who specialized in Italian sports cars, would personally oversee its loading and transport. With preparations complete, we gathered at my house at midnight, speaking in hushed tones despite being well out of earshot of any neighbors. The team arrived in nondescript vehicles, parking down the street to avoid attention. James had created a detailed map of my property outlining the path each car would take from garage to street to minimize time spent visible. At 1:30 in the morning, we began. The enclosed trailer for the Ferrari arrived first, backing quietly into my driveway, with lights minimal. Marcus and I carefully pushed the Dino out of the garage and up the trailer ramp, securing it with precision. Within 20 minutes, it was loaded and on its way to the warehouse. Next came the 1959 Cadillac, driven by James himself. Its massive engine rumbled to life, impossibly loud in the still night, despite our modifications to quiet the exhaust. I winced at each decibel, imagining my parents somehow hearing it miles away. James pulled away slowly, headlights off, until he reached the main road. One by one, the vehicles left my property. The 1970 Challenger, recently restored to show condition, gleamed under the moonlight as my friend Taylor eased it down the driveway. The 1963 Corvette split window, possibly the most beautiful American car ever designed, disappeared into the night with Sam at the wheel. For cars that couldn't be driven, we had arranged 2 flatbed tow trucks operated by trusted colleagues from the restoration community. They worked with practiced efficiency, loading the Porsche Speedster and Impala, without the typical beeping sounds of commercial tow operations. The process was physically and emotionally exhausting. Each departure felt like watching a piece of myself driven away, a forced separation from what I had built. By 3:30 a.m., we had moved 8 cars, with 4 still remaining: the 1966 Shelby GT 350, my grandfather's Mustang, a 1971 Jaguar E-Type, and a 1977 Trans Am, still in the midst of restoration. The Shelby presented a challenge when its temperamental electrical system refused to cooperate. We spent 20 tense minutes diagnosing a loose connection before it finally roared to life. Every unexpected delay increased my anxiety, the fear of discovery growing with each passing minute. The Trans Am, being mid-restoration, required flatbed transport. As the tow truck operator carefully winched it onto the bed, a neighboring dog began barking furiously. We all froze, waiting to see if lights would come on in surrounding houses. After a painfully long minute, the dog quieted, and we resumed breathing. By 4:30 a.m., all 12 vehicles had been successfully transported to the warehouse. I followed the last transport in my daily driver carrying essential tools and diagnostic equipment. When I arrived, I found James and our friends arranging the cars in neat rows, each positioned with respect for its place in the collection. The warehouse looked nothing like my lovingly maintained garage barn. Concrete floors instead of epoxy sealed surfaces, fluorescent lighting instead of my custom LED system, industrial walls instead of my climate-controlled space. But it was secure with a sophisticated alarm system we immediately enhanced with additional cameras and motion sensors. Dawn was breaking as we finished securing the last vehicle. Our friends departed with sincere offers of continued support, leaving James and me alone in the cavernous space. I walked slowly between my cars, touching each one gently, as if apologizing for their displacement. What kind of family drives someone to this? I whispered, emotion finally overwhelming me. What kind of sister tries to take what someone has built over a decade of hard work? James wrapped his arms around me as tears finally came. The kind that never learned about consequences, he said gently. The kind that values getting what they want over the relationships they damage along the way. We drove back to my house as the sun cleared the horizon, both physically and emotionally drained. The empty garage felt like a mausoleum. The vacant spaces where my cars had stood like missing teeth in a smile. We'd removed all signs of the night's activities, leaving nothing that would indicate where the collection had gone. I took one last look before closing the garage door. The bare space represented not just missing vehicles, but a fundamental shift in my relationship with my family. Whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. Trust, once broken so completely, might never be fully restored. As we entered the house, exhaustion hit me like a physical blow. James led me to the bedroom where I collapsed fully clothed onto the bed. My last thought before sleep claimed me was a mix of relief and sadness. My cars were safe, but at what cost to my family relationships? And what would happen when my parents and Amanda discovered what I'd done? I awoke around noon to the sound of angry pounding on my front door. Disoriented from too little sleep and the emotional drain of the night's activities, I stumbled to my feet. James was already up, peering through the window blinds. "It's them," he confirmed grimly. "Your parents and Amanda. And they look furious." The pounding continued, accompanied by my father's voice. "Ella, open this door immediately. We know you're in there." James looked at me questioningly. I nodded, straightening my rumpled clothes and running fingers through my tangled hair. Better to face this head on. I opened the door to find my father mid-knock, his face flushed with anger. My mother stood beside him, arms crossed and lips pressed into a thin line. Amanda pushed past them both, storming into my house without invitation. "Where are they?" she demanded, heading straight for the hallway that led to the garage door. "What did you do with the cars?" I closed the front door quietly, composing myself before following her. My parents trailed behind, tension radiating from them like heat. Amanda had already thrown open the garage door and stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the empty space. All 12 cars were gone, not a trace of them remaining, except for faint oil spots on the concrete floor. "What have you done?" My father's voice was dangerously quiet as he took in the vacant garage. "I protected my property from people who tried to access it without permission in the middle of the night," I replied evenly. "From people who listed my vehicles for sale without my consent." Amanda spun around, face contorted with rage. "You selfish bitch! You knew I needed that money. Where did you hide them?" James stepped forward, his presence solid and reassuring beside me. "I suggest everyone calm down. Ella has documentation that those vehicles are her legal property and she has the right to store them wherever she chooses. This doesn't concern you," my father snapped at him before turning back to me. "This is a family matter." "A family matter?" I laughed incredulously. "Is that what you call attempting to force me to sell my life's work to buy your adult daughter a house she hasn't earned and can't afford?" "You owe this family," my mother insisted. "After all we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me?" I challenged. Serious question. What specific support have you provided for my education, my business, or my collection that would entitle you to any claim on my assets? We raised you, my father blustered. We put a roof over your head and food on the table. That's called the basic legal obligation of parenthood, I countered. Not a debt I have to repay by giving Amanda $1 million house. Amanda had been rummaging through the garage as if she might find a car hidden behind a cabinet. She emerged with renewed fury. I already told people I was getting a house. I've been talking to realtors. Do you know how humiliating this is? Almost as humiliating as having to work for a living, I suggested. She lunged toward me, but James stepped between us. That's enough, he said firmly. I think everyone needs to leave now, not until she tells us where she's hidden the cars my father insisted. This childish stunt needs to end. It's not a stunt, I replied. It's a response to your actions. You tried to enter my garage unauthorized at night. You brought a dealer to my property against my explicit instructions. Amanda listed my cars for sale online without my permission. The stunt was yours, not mine. You'll regret this, Amanda hissed. You have no idea what you're starting. Actually, I know exactly what I'm preventing, I corrected her. You've never faced consequences for your actions. You've always had mom and dad to bail you out. But you've crossed a line trying to take what I've built, and I won't allow it. My mother's expression suddenly shifted from anger to calculated sympathy. Honey, we understand you're attached to your cars, but Amanda is in crisis. She needs a stable home to recover from her divorce trauma. Surely a few vehicles are worth sacrificing for your sister's well-being. Her emotional manipulation was so transparent it was almost comical. Amanda has options that don't involve taking my property. She can get a job like every other adult. She can find affordable housing like every other adult. She can learn to live within her means like every other adult. What she can't do is take my cars. My father changed tactics, his banker persona taking over. You realize this could become a legal matter. Family assets have certain considerations in court. James cleared his throat. Actually, I accompanied Ella to her attorney's office yesterday. Her ownership is well documented and completely separate from any family assets. The attorney also filed a restraining order based on your nighttime attempt to access the garage and the unauthorized car listings. My father's face paled slightly. You went to an attorney against your own family to protect myself from my own family, I corrected. I never thought I'd need to, but here we are. Amanda started crying big, theatrical sobs that had worked on our parents her entire life. I can't believe you'd do this to me, after everything I've been through. What exactly have you been through? I asked calmly. A divorce that resulted from your own financial dishonesty. Having to move back to our parents' comfortable home. Being expected to support yourself like every other adult on the planet. You always hated me, she wailed. You've always been jealous of me. I'm not jealous of someone who can't function independently at 34, I said. I'm sad for you. And I'm angry at mom and dad for enabling you instead of helping you grow up. That's enough, my father thundered. This conversation is over, but don't think this is the end of the matter, Ella. There will be consequences for this betrayal. I handed him an envelope I'd prepared that morning. This is a formal cease and desist letter from my attorney. It addresses the unauthorized entry attempt, the car listings, and makes it clear that any further attempts to access, sell, or claim my property will result in immediate legal action. I've also documented every communication where you've demanded I sell my collection for Amanda's benefit. He took the envelope wordlessly, his expression hardening. I think it's time for you all to leave, James said, opening the front door pointedly. As they moved toward the exit, Amanda turned with one final barb. The family is done with you, Ella. Hope your precious cars keep you warm at night. After they left, James and I stood in silence for a long moment. The confrontation had gone much as expected, but the finality of it still felt shocking. I had just essentially severed ties with my immediate family over their attempt to take what I had built. That afternoon, my phone exploded with notifications as Amanda launched her campaign of family opinion. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I rarely spoke with began messaging me most, having heard a heavily edited version of events where I was hoarding wealth while my poor sister suffered in poverty. A few more reasonable relatives reached out for my side of the story, but most simply accepted Amanda's narrative without question. James suggested we get away for the weekend somewhere without cell reception, where I could process everything that had happened. I initially resisted the idea of leaving so soon after relocating the cars, but he gently pointed out that I had a security system sending alerts to my phone and trusted friends checking on the warehouse daily. We drove to a cabin in the mountains, 3 hours from any family drama. For 2 days, I alternated between numbness, grief, and anger as the reality settled in. My family had not just asked, but demanded I give up my passion, my investment, my life's work not for a genuine emergency, but to maintain Amanda's preferred lifestyle without effort on her part. On Sunday evening, as we prepared to return to reality, James asked the question that had been hanging between us. What now? With your family, I mean. I looked out at the sunset painting, the mountains in gold and purple beauty that existed regardless of human drama. I don't know. I can't go back to pretending everything is normal. I can't trust them after this. Maybe some distance is needed, he suggested carefully. Time for everyone to recalibrate. I nodded slowly. When we betray the people we're supposed to love, there has to be a consequence, or nothing ever changes. I think this is Amanda's consequence, and my parents' too. Distance until they can respect my boundaries and acknowledge what they tried to do was wrong. We returned home to discover Amanda had escalated her social media campaign, posting thinly veiled references to selfish siblings and toxic family dynamics. She had somehow convinced several mutual childhood friends that I was the villain in this scenario, leading to awkward messages questioning my character. For the first time in my life, I used the block feature, liberally removing access to my life for those who couldn't bother to hear both sides. It was surprisingly liberating, like pruning dead branches to allow healthier growth. With James's support, I refocused on my work, channeling emotions into restoration projects. Clients noticed a new intensity in my craftsmanship, though none knew the personal turmoil behind it. The cars remained secure in their temporary home, visited regularly, but missed daily. 3 months passed without contact from my immediate family. Extended relatives occasionally provided updates. Amanda still wasn't working, my parents were still supporting her. And the narrative of my villain status remained largely intact among those who didn't know me well. Then on an ordinary Tuesday morning, my phone displayed a text message that stopped me mid-sip of coffee. It was from Amanda. I have a job interview tomorrow. First one in years. Thought you might want to know. No demands, no accusations, no drama. Just a simple statement of fact. I stared at it for several minutes, unsure how to respond, or whether this was some new manipulation tactic. Eventually, I replied with equal simplicity. Good luck. I mean that. Her response came quickly. Thanks, I know you probably don't believe me, but this is real. I showed the exchange to James that evening. He looked thoughtful. Could be a genuine step forward or could be setting up for a new angle. Hard to tell with her pattern. I agreed, but found myself hoping it was genuine. Despite everything, Amanda was my sister. I didn't want her to fail at life. I wanted her to learn how to succeed on her own terms. A week later, another text arrived. Got the job. Assistant manager at Westfield Mall Boutique. Not glamorous, but it's something. That's a start, I replied. Congratulations. Days later, parents cut me off financially when I told them about the job interview. Said if I was ready to work, I was ready to pay my own bills. Ironic timing. This revelation stunned me. After all their demands that I sacrifice for Amanda, they'd finally stopped enabling her the moment she showed initiative. The dysfunction ran deeper than I'd realized. 2 weeks passed before I received her next message. Can we meet? Just talk. Neutral location. I consulted with James, who advised caution, but supported whatever decision I made. After consideration, I agreed to meet Amanda for coffee at a shop equidistant from our locations. She arrived on time, a small surprise itself. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair replaced by simple retail work attire and a more practical haircut. She looked simultaneously older and younger, somehow more worn but less artificial. I half expected her to launch into a rehearsed speech, but instead, she stirred her coffee in silence for several minutes before speaking. I've been awful to you, she finally said, eyes on her cup. Not just recently. Always. I said, nothing, waiting to see where this would go. Working actual retail is eye-opening, she continued. Dealing with entitled customers who treat you like furniture instead of a person makes me realize how I've treated most people in my life, including you. It's a start recognizing that I offered neutrally. She nodded. Mom and Dad enabled everything. But I let them. Demanded it, really. Her eyes finally met mine. The car thing was insane. I see that now. I was so desperate to keep living the life I had with Thomas, I convinced myself I deserved your things more than you did. The admission was more than I had expected. What changed reality, she said simply. When Mom and Dad cut me off, I had two choices. Actually stand on my own feet for once, or become homeless. Turns out the fear of homelessness is motivating. She explained that our parents had finally reached their financial limit. The second mortgage for her wedding, ongoing support during and after her marriage, and their own approaching retirement had forced a reckoning. When she mentioned the job interview, they had seized the opportunity to end their financial support, perhaps out of necessity, as much as principle. The first month was brutal, she admitted. I had no idea how to budget, how to prioritize needs over wants. I ate ramen for 2 weeks straight because I spent grocery money on a purse out of habit. I found myself smiling slightly. Been there. When I was saving for my first project car, I lived on ramen and worked 60-hour weeks. She looked genuinely curious. How did you do it? Stay motivated through all that sacrifice. I had a clear goal, I explained. Each sacrifice brought me closer to something I really wanted. That makes temporary discomfort easier to bear. Our conversation continued for 2 hours, more honest than any we'd had in our adult lives. Amanda was still Amanda, impulsive, prone to dramatizing, quick to feel sorry for herself. But underneath, I glimpsed something new, the beginning of self-awareness and a tentative willingness to change. When we parted, she surprised me with an awkward hug. I'm not asking to see the cars or know where they are, she said. But someday, when you trust me again, I'd like you to show me why they matter so much to you. I never really tried to understand before. That coffee meeting began a cautious rebuilding. Not instant trust or forgetting, but small steps toward a different kind of relationship. Amanda remained at her retail job, eventually moving to a small apartment with a roommate. She discovered a genuine interest in fashion merchandising, leveraging her aesthetic sense in a more practical direction than her previous career attempts. My relationship with our parents evolved more slowly. The first contact came from my mother, a text asking if I was well. I responded politely but briefly. Gradually, we established a minimal communication pattern, carefully avoiding mention of cars or Amanda's financial situation. 6 months after the confrontation, I invited Amanda to my shop for the first time. She showed genuine interest as I demonstrated basic restoration techniques, asking intelligent questions about the business side of my work. When she asked about my collection, I deflected gently, explaining that trust would take time to rebuild. She accepted this with surprising grace. I don't blame you. What we tried to do was basically theft. I wouldn't trust me either. As Amanda stabilized, developing actual adulting skills at 35 that most learn at 20, my parents began their own tentative outreach. My father called to discuss a neutral topic, a shared interest in baseball, and carefully avoided any contentious subjects. My mother suggested lunch, which I accepted with clear boundaries about acceptable conversation topics. Nearly a year after moving my cars in the middle of the night, I began the process of bringing them home. The warehouse lease was ending, and my property now boasted a state-of-the-art security system with biometric access controls. I no longer feared midnight intrusions or unauthorized sales attempts. James helped coordinate the return operation, considerably less stressful than the original evacuation. As each vehicle reclaimed its space in my garage and climate-controlled barn, I felt a sense of rightness restored. These weren't just possessions, they were physical manifestations of my passion, skill, and life choices. 2 weeks after the collection returned home, I received an unexpected text from Amanda. I know you probably moved the cars back by now. I want you to know I'm glad they're home where they belong. They're yours, they've always been yours, and I'm sorry I ever tried to take them. The message represented something I had almost given up hoping for: genuine recognition of boundaries and ownership. In response, I took a risk. Want to come see them this weekend? the real collection with the stories behind each one. Her excitement was palpable even through text. When she arrived Saturday morning, I gave her the full tour, explaining each vehicle's history, the restoration challenges, and why it held special meaning. For the first time, she listened without interrupting, without making it about herself. When we reached the Ferrari Dino, the car she had specifically tried to force me to sell, she grew quiet. "It's even more beautiful than I remembered," she finally said. "I can't believe I wanted to take this from you." "It's just a car," I found myself saying, though we both knew it was more. "It's your passion," she corrected. "Your life's work, the physical proof of your talent and discipline." I didn't see that before because I was too busy feeling entitled to things I hadn't earned. That afternoon marked a turning point in our adult relationship. Not best friends, not completely healed, but moving in a better direction. Amanda was learning at 36 what I had understood at 22, that meaningful achievement comes through effort, that satisfaction derives from building rather than taking. When James proposed the following month, I hesitated only briefly before including my family in our small celebration dinner. Amanda came alone bringing a thoughtfully chosen gift and genuine congratulations. My parents attended with a careful politeness that acknowledged past wounds while suggesting future healing. As we plan our wedding, I find myself reflecting on how quickly family dynamics can collapse and how slowly they rebuild. The midnight rescue of my car collection was both a low point and a catalyst. Something had to break before it could be remade into something healthier. I still keep my garage security system armed and my financial boundaries firm. Trust, once shattered, rebuilds in tiny increments rather than grand gestures. But within those boundaries, there's now room for a different kind of family relationship. One based on mutual respect rather than obligation or entitlement. Amanda continues her slow journey toward independence, with occasional setbacks, but genuine progress. My parents are learning reluctantly that enabling isn't helping, and that adult children must face the natural consequences of their choices. These lessons have come painfully late for all involved, but they've come nonetheless. As for my car collection, it remains both my passion and my financial security. Each vehicle tells a story not just of automotive history, but of my personal journey, including the night when 12 classics vanished, to protect them from those who should have respected them most. The cars survived, and so did we as a family, though transformed into something different than before. Sometimes what we save isn't just our possessions, but our self-respect, our boundaries, our right to the lives we've built through dedication and work. That's a lesson worth far more than even the rarest Ferrari. Have you ever had to protect something you loved from the people who should have supported you most? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries even with family. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, what you build with your own hands and heart is yours to cherish and protect. No one else gets to decide its value or its fate.